From scary dolls that will haunt your dreams to a human transitioning to a werewolf, here are the top 5 terrifying secrets Ed and Lorraine Warren tried to hide us from. Number 5 on this list is the Dark Magic Doll. Yep, anything called the Dark Magic Doll is probably something I don't want to know about. That's most likely why Ed and Lorraine locked this thing up in their museum, because it's really not something that should be out in the public world for anyone to have. We've all heard about voodoo dolls before and the potential powers that they can have. Dolls that are made through some sort of dark ritual with the power to then affect people on a real life basis. Usually these dolls are made with a singular person in mind, and the doll that's created can only ever affect that one person. The same principle applies to this magic doll. However, the thing with this one is that from my understanding, you don't need to make it with only one person in mind. Simply using the doll while picturing an individual should create the same effect as a voodoo doll. It's said to use this thing, you need to hang it from its neck, and then the person that you have in mind is going to get sick and eventually die. Now, I'm not sure if you can use this doll more than once, or if it's just a one-off, but it's probably a good thing that the public doesn't know such information. Think about how dangerous this doll actually is, especially if it got into the hands of the wrong person. Somebody who wanted to inflict harm onto someone else could easily do so from the comfort of their own home, and nobody would be the wiser. To make this doll requires some pretty dark rituals and some sinister magic, but the Warrens were pretty secretive about the exact process of constructing this thing, and again, probably for the best. Having information like that out in the open on how to make such a deadly and dangerous doll just isn't safe for anybody. Right now, the only known doll is currently locked up in the Ed and Lorraine Warren Museum. Hopefully it stays there and we don't ever see any more of these creepy things popping up in the world again. Number 4 on this list is the Smyrl haunting. So we've all heard about Amityville and we've heard about the Enfield poltergeist, but one haunting that didn't get talked about nearly as much was the Smyrl haunting. Maybe it's because it was just a little bit too scary and the Warrens didn't want to release such information to the public. An article discussing the 7 best cases from Ed and Lorraine writes, in 1974, Jack and Jeanette Smyrl moved into a house on Chase Street, West Pittston, Pennsylvania. Strange occurrences followed, leading the Smyrls to believe that a demon possessed their home. They claimed the demon had slammed their German Shepherd into a wall, bit Jack's ear, and pushed one of their daughters down a flight of stairs. Both Jack and Janet were said to have been assaulted by the demon. In 1986, they contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren, who confirmed that their house was indeed haunted. Ed Warren would go on to say that he had witnessed a dark mass form inside the home and that the demon had left him a message telling him to get out. Now, one thing that I think gets glossed over a little bit in this article is the time that these people moved into their home compared to the time that Ed and Lorraine actually showed up. 1974 is when they entered this house, and Ed and Lorraine didn't get there until 1986. These people were living in a home that was severely haunted, so much so that they were getting assaulted by a demon, and they were living there for over 10 years. I think we think about haunting sometimes as being like a week-long scary event or something like that, but this was literally over a decade of living in absolute fear. Why this family didn't move is beyond me, but maybe they were scared this creature would just keep following them wherever they go. I think this is why this one doesn't get talked about as much. 6 months is one thing, but 10 years is totally different. Ed and Lorraine knew that and probably didn't want to scare the public into thinking that they could get haunted for potentially their entire lives. Number 3 on this list is the African fertility dolls. Tony Spera goes into detail about these dolls on the official Ed and Lorraine YouTube channel, and the story is pretty creepy. Apparently these dolls, which are now in their possession, were originally from Africa. They were made by an African witch doctor, but were then stolen from him and brought back to America. They were sent to a police officer who was in on the theft and thought that he could get some serious value for some authentic African fertility dolls. What he didn't expect was for these dolls to take his life. After he acquired these dolls, he soon became paralyzed from the neck down and, after some time, succumbed to this disease and died. These dolls are cursed, and after stealing them from their respective owner, took the life of those who were responsible. Now they're in the museum, and Tony warns us on the YouTube channel about ever touching them, for a similar fate could happen to us. It's stuff like this that really flew under the radar during Ed and Lorraine Warren's time. But the fact that these dolls exist, and there are probably many more of them in the world, is truly very terrifying. Number 2 on this list is the Southend werewolf. Born and bred in the Essex seaside town of Southend, the first inkling of trouble came when William Ramsey was just 9 years old. Like any normal child, he was outside in his back garden when he began to feel strange. It was deep into one Saturday afternoon in 1952 when an icy blast of frigid cold swept over him. Perspiration froze on his skin and a foul stench came close to making him vomit. The bewildered youngster only had 2 things on his mind: running away to a life on the ocean wave and wolves. By this time he was close to the garden fence, and only the calls of his mother brought him out of whatever had gripped him. However, something else took complete control of him instead. Intense and pure rage had installed itself firmly within his psyche. Using this and the adrenaline-fueled strength he now possessed, he had uprooted a fence post with the fence still attached to it and was swinging it like a club. Not even his parents could easily remove the post with their bare hands. That was a passage written by Les Hewitt talking about the beginning of the Southend werewolf case. This incident was the beginning of a long road for Bill. For 15 years, though, he didn't have another episode until he started having dreams. Dreams that his wife would look at him and run off in fear after seeing him. These eventually ceased, but then 15 more years later at a party, it all came out. Apparently on the drive back home from this party, Bill lost it. He turned into a complete animal and the wolf came out. Scratching and biting at the driver, Bill had completely turned into a werewolf. His body changed too. His shoulders hunched, his nails grew to claws, his humanity had completely left him. The Warrens were then brought in to help him and had to perform several exorcisms to get rid of this werewolf presence. Think about this entire story though. Bill, to my knowledge, hadn't been bitten by a werewolf or had any extended exposure to one. He just became one. How scary is that? At any given point, I could just slowly start to develop werewolf-like characteristics and turn into a rabid super beast. I think that's why this case didn't get as much media coverage as some of the other ones. Just the fact that something like this could happen, and I mean, that could really scare the public. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Shadow Doll. So we already talked about some other dolls, but this takes it to a whole nother level. You know the horror movie franchise Chucky? Where the doll is possessed with a serial killer and it's out to get people, like that whole bit? Well, this doll makes Chucky look like the sort of thing you invite to your kid's birthday party. Yeah, it's pretty freaking bad. The Shadow Doll, for one, looks absolutely terrifying. It looks like this woman with a white face totally covered in black robes with chains and spikes sticking out of her. It's apparently made of bones and even has a human tooth in it. Now, even though this doll doesn't operate like Chucky and move around in the real world, it does something even more terrifying. Anytime you go to sleep, you aren't safe if the Shadow Doll has you in its sights. It's said that this grotesque-looking creature will come to you while you're sleeping in your dreams and terrorize you. It isn't said to be a quick kill either, like this thing's pretty sadistic in how it haunts you. It will keep coming back over and over and over again until finally it terrorizes you to a point where your heart literally stops out of fear and you never wake up. Think about how horrible that would be. To be absolutely terrified of going to sleep because you know that the second you close your eyes, this shadow doll could be upon you and it might be your last night ever. Similar to the other dolls that we talked about, this thing is locked up in the museum, but I personally don't think that's enough. I know that the Warrens like to show this stuff off, but honestly, screw it. This thing is far too dangerous. Burn it with some fire, and let's be done with it. Well, there you have it, guys. That is our list of the top 5 terrifying secrets Ed and Lorraine Warren tried to hide from us. Please comment down below what you thought about this list and some other potentially scary Warren secrets that you may know about. Also, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. I've been your host, Nicholas Playlog, and I'll catch you next time.